reconcile. Brian's going to be taking it. But you can say that.
Hello, everyone. I think obviously this week we have to pass a continuing resolution. We expect to be able to accomplish that, maybe with a few amendments to make sure the government doesn't shut down. Among a number of people have been invited down to the White House this afternoon, I believe, to discuss the supplemental. Probably this is the best question to ask the Majority Leader, but my assumption is we're likely to be on that in the Senate next week. I think it's important that we discuss all aspects of it. Obviously, our border representatives, Senator Langford, has done an excellent job. And one of the things that I keep reminding my members is if we had a 100% Republican government, President, House, Senate, we probably would not be able to get a single Democratic vote to pass what Senator Langford and the administration are trying to get together on. So this is a unique opportunity to accomplish something in divided government that wouldn't be there under unified government. So we're hoping to get a credible border package. And of course, the rest of the bill is important. We're getting shot at. The Houthis are shooting at our ships. They're shooting at commercial ships. And we've got a war in Israel, a war in Ukraine. I'm sure the Chinese were unhappy with the outcome of the presidential election in Taiwan a few days ago. We have a number of important international responsibilities, and I think it's time to go ahead with the supplemental, and I'm anticipating that'll be before us next week.
It's now been 100 days since the horrific terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel, and we still haven't been able to get a supplemental appropriations package moved here in the Senate. I think a lot of Republicans want to support Ukraine. A lot of Republicans want to make sure that we are voicing and backing up our strong support for our ally Israel. But we have insisted upon, and will continue to insist upon having a strong border security package attached so that we are defending America's southern border. And just to put it again into perspective, I know I've said this many times, but you look at the month of December, the average every single day was 9,700 people that were coming across the border illegally, and those were the people that were being apprehended and caught. And then you look at the number of people on the terrorist watch list. Last year it was 169, and that is the equivalent of the 6 previous years combined. People have figured out that we have a porous southern border. It is a national security threat, a national security crisis, which needs to be addressed and must be addressed as part of this supplemental appropriations bill. And we have, as the leader pointed out, had James Langford in the lead on this. He's done a great job. He's gotten significant reforms with respect to asylum, expedited removal, border security, physical barrier, technological barrier, a lot of good progress. But the one issue that is still outstanding is parole. And the administration has abused and misused its parole authority in a way that has led to 95% of the people who come across our southern border illegally are being released to and admitted into the country. And the authority they use for that is parole. That has to be stopped. It's an abuse of the authority. It's abuse of the law, for that matter. And so this is the issue right now that our members are really focused on. And Senator Langford is working hard to try and address that in the context of this border security package. But it is critical that we get this done in order to get the bill moving and the assistance flowing to our allies around the world who are facing national security threats as well. But we can't do that without taking care and addressing the national security risk and threat that we have right at our southern border.
Well, shoo, the Iowa caucuses are over. I want to thank everybody for coming out and participating in that and tagging along with a number of our Republican presidential candidates. But what were those candidates hearing while they were in our great state of Iowa? They were getting an earful, believe me. So number one is the economy. Folks back home are really, really concerned about the economy, and they're racking up debt in order to pay their bills. So it really is like a dumpster fire with this economy under Bidenomics. Number two is the southern border. They were expressing their frustration to the candidates about this wide open border and the fact that under President Biden, we've seen nearly 9 million illegal border crossings. 9 million, that's almost 3 times the number of people that reside in the state of Iowa. And then if you notice the temperatures during the caucus the other night, about the high on Monday was maybe a -2 or a -1. That was the high without the wind chill. And if you notice the news, there are a lot of electric vehicles that were just like sitting around because they couldn't hold a charge and they wouldn't charge. And yet this is Joe Biden's electric vehicle fantasy, is to have everybody drive an EV. So these are the things that our folks in Iowa were expressing to our candidates. So we need to address these situations right now, today. I have kicked off my county tours already. I did a few of those on Monday. I'll be hearing from Iowans all through the year at my various town halls. Again, it needs to be addressed because I tell you, folks back home in Iowa, and I've heard it expressed so many different ways, they look at this administration and the way they've expressed it, I'm going to put it all into one expression, but it is like a dumpster fire on a train wreck that's headed towards a sinking ship inside of a Sharknado. So that's what we feel about the Biden administration. We need him to step up and correct it right now because we've got to get through a whole nother year of this, okay? So Joe Biden, step up, do the right thing. Let's get the economy in order. Let's produce our own energy, and let's secure the southern border.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I wanted to just voice my vigorous support for the border negotiations that Senator Lankford is engaged in and how absolutely critical the parole portion of that is, as my colleagues have mentioned. I'd also like to mention today, so far, no votes. What could we be doing? Appropriations bills. We could be doing our appropriations bills, and yet Senator Schumer will not put them up on the floor. We've wasted so much time with this. I mentioned it again last week. I wanted to bring up another issue today that I'm hearing a lot about, especially from families who have children that are getting ready, or maybe they are themselves getting ready to apply to go to higher education. And that is the free application for for federal student aid, the FAFSA. Maybe some of you filled it out when you were applying. Maybe your parents filled it out. Maybe you're filling it out now. Well, our not departed, but our no longer colleague, Senator Lamar Alexander, fought hard and hard to simplify the FAFSA. This administration's had 3 years to do this. It is now law to simplify this application. Normally, it comes out October 1st. Makes sense. You start filling out your applications, and you get your you start making your decisions in the spring is what you're going to do. This administration did not release their new form until December 30th, and that was only for like an hour. Then it was December 31st. It is now live after the first week of January. But it's been a colossal mess. And here's the biggest part of the mess. When they put the calculations in for how much you earn and how much Pell Grant you could get and how much financial aid you could expect, you're supposed to tie it to inflation. Guess what? They did not tie this to any inflationary figures in some of the largest inflationary times that I've ever known. Therefore, what's the result? Number one, if they try to correct this colossal mistake, they will push back people's abilities to make decisions and have rush decisions for students. Or the students and families will be receiving less federal student aid to which they are entitled. And I have a feeling B is what's going to happen. So this year is going to be a bust for our families because the administration has totally blown the rollout of something they've had 3 years to do that's supposed to simplify and help our families be able to afford higher education for their families.
We didn't have a caucus in Iowa, but we did have some cold weather, and with all due respect to Senator Ernst, it was colder in Montana than in Iowa. Saturday morning, when I woke up in Belgrade, Montana, the temperature at the airport was minus 44. That's ambient. You add wind chill, it was negative 60 plus. Anyway, many of us have been involved in interviews before. Sometimes the question is, where are you going to be in 10 years? That's a question you usually or sometimes hear in an interview, but now it's the question being asked of illegal immigrants who've come into this country, the southern border. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants are receiving a notice to appear in immigration court as they're being released into our country. As of last year, there were some notices that started to be dated for as far out as 2033. The AP had a story, immigrants waiting 10 years in U.S. just to get a court date. Now, if you think they're going to be showing up for that court date at 2 p.m. on such and such date in 2033, you might have think twice about where reality is. And by the way, that's just for the initial hearing. It's estimated to take about 4 years to move through the case, through the system, before there's a final adjudication. So that means there's some migrants that are going to be here 14 years before it's even determined whether their asylum claim is legitimate or not. Aside from the obvious insanity of counting on illegal immigrants to actually show up to a court case that's scheduled a decade in the future, this massive flow is hurting legitimate asylum seekers. This is an unprecedented border crisis. It's overwhelmed Border Patrol agents. It's broken the immigration system. And this backlog is the symptom. It's not the actual problem we need to solve. So Joe Biden and Senate Democrats' open border policies have created this unprecedented flow of illegal immigrants who are rushing to our border from around the world. As I talked about last week, there's a daily flight from Istanbul to Bogota, and we're picking up individuals who are on the terror watch list who are headed to the United States of America. We must secure our southern border immediately, stem the flow of migrants, and reform the asylum standards.
Leader McConnell.
Mr. McConnell, no matter who, I'm sorry.
I'm wondering why it seems that you and Speaker Johnson are not on the same page about the border talks. He's been throwing cold water on these efforts to move off of H.R. 2. Are you concerned about that?
Well, it's not unusual for the House and Senate to be in a different place on lots of issues. The way this needs to go forward is for this one of the bodies to pass something that would actually get a signature. And so the supplemental in the Senate is designed to actually pass, which would mean not only would it have to get through the House, but be signed by the president. So we can only deal with what we have before us in the Senate. Typically, if the Senate and House vote for different things, you have a conference to try to work it out. I don't know what the House will do. What we're working on is trying to get a package out of the Senate that deals with national security and border security in a credible way.
Leader McConnell, have you spoken to Senator Grassley or Senator Ernst, and can anybody give us an update on his condition, please?
I think you just check with their officers.
But all they put out is that statement
Leader
last
McConnell,
night.
what is your goal heading into the White House meeting this afternoon? What do you hope to accomplish at this meeting?
Well, first of all, I want to listen to what they have to say. I don't have a particular goal. They called the meeting and decided who to invite. I said I would be happy to come. My assumption is it's going to be not so much about the border negotiations, but about the other aspects of the supplemental related to all the national security threats we have in Ukraine and Israel. And now they're shooting at us. The Houthis are shooting at us. So this is getting closer and closer to us, and I think that's what they want to talk about.
Speaker Johnson said he was worried that Ukraine could become another Afghanistan. Do you see that as a possibility, or what's your response to that worry?
Well, I think Afghanistan was a big success. We had not lost any personnel there in 5 or more years. Women were largely normalized. There were girls in school, and we weren't getting killed, and the terrorists were not able to operate there. So my view, may be different from others, was that Afghanistan was a big success, and in withdrawing from Afghanistan, we sent a message to Putin, for example, that maybe we were pulling back from international responsibility. It was like, go right ahead, we won't be there. That's not how I think our foreign policy ought to be pursued by this particular administration. The president was anxious to get out of Afghanistan, and look what's happened since. In all these different areas, they've been on the aggressor list. China, Russia, Iran, and Iran's proxies.
Leader McConnell, on Iowa. Thank you so much.